While calls for Scottish independence are met with barks of now is not the time, recent polling shows the question may not be quite as settled as some would like to believe. Which raises the question, does Scotland have a mandate to hold a second independence referendum? The last few years have left a hole in the promises of the Better Together campaign large enough to drive a Brexit-themed bus through. Falling short on federalism to failing to protect shipyards, the previous case for staying in the UK is on shaky ground. And that's before we even get to the whole EU thing. Yeah, that one. Still though, that hasn't stopped those against independence from claiming that Scotland not only doesn't want another vote, but also has no mandate to even call for one. In a recent tweet, the Scottish Tories claimed, "The SNP have no mandate for a second referendum on independence. We said no, we meant it, why can't they listen?" Unfortunately for the Scottish Tories, they are just completely wrong. 2 years after the first referendum, Scotland returned a pro-independence majority to the Scottish Parliament. Between the SNP and the Scottish Greens, they make up 68 seats in the chamber, and both of them were elected on manifestos that explicitly backed independence and bringing the question back to the people at an appropriate time. So what does an appropriate time look like? Well, on page 24 of the SNP's Holyrood manifesto, on which they were elected, they state that that would be anything that is a significant and material change in the circumstances that prevailed in 2014, such as, and here's the kicker, Scotland being taken out of the EU against our will. So, along comes the Brexit referendum, in which a whopping 62% of Scots backed staying in the EU, yet here we are facing a no-deal Brexit with Boris Johnson as Prime Minister. If we're talking about having the authority to call for a second independence referendum, well, this is what voters backed in 2016. And then again in the 2017 Westminster election, and again in the 2019 EU election, all of which returned a majority of SNP candidates. And this is where the Scottish Tory leader Ruth Davidson truly caught herself out. Her EU election campaign called on voters to send a message to the SNP that the people don't want a second referendum. Well, the voters sent a message alright, but it just wasn't the one Ruth Davidson had been hoping for. It gets better though, or worse, depending where you stand. Recent polling also revealed that only 48% of Scots were now opposed to a second referendum in the next few years. So, between a majority of voters repeatedly backing pro-independence candidates, a litany of broken promises, and polls showing opposition to a second referendum collapsing, it seems that opponents of independence can no longer in good faith claim that Scotland doesn't have a mandate to put the question of independence back to the people. And speaking of mandates, should a party who came a distant second in the Holyrood election really be standing in the way of democracy? Let us know what you think in the comments down below, and please do like and share this video. You can expect to see a lot more content like this from now on, so do follow our social media to keep up to date. See you all next time.